Hello friends, my name is Phil and this is PG Prototypes. I usually don't like being in front of the camera, but Hilton from Proper Chuffed convinced me that this might be a more personal approach to my videos, so I'm going to give it a try today and see how it goes. So what is in today's video? Well, we're going to start off with this little beauty from Hornby, not a new release from Hornby, but a new loco for me, and I'm really excited about this one. Next, we're going to move on to the second industry of the layout, which I need to complete before I can start doing any of the groundwork or landscaping. And today's episode is a little bit different in how I approach the designing and concept of this building. So I'm quite excited to do that today. And lastly, we're going to run a bigger loco on the layout, which was a viewer request, one of these beautiful Class 20s, my other favorite class of locomotive. So we'll see how that runs on the layout. So I hope you enjoy this different format today, and I'm really excited to show you my new design methods. So let's get stuck into today's episode.
The latest addition to the fleet is this Rowntree & Co. Limited Ruston and Hornsby 88DS040 Ken Cooke number 3 by Hornby. If what I read is correct online, this model was released in 2023, so it's not a new model, but it's my first time playing with one of these. I paid 2,545 Rand, which equates to about 107 pounds, which really isn't that bad on this side of the world. The loco comes in the regular Hornby molded plastic box with a protective sleeve, and right as I opened the box I was impressed with this livery. Precise paintwork and decals, and I'm already excited to take it out of the box. Prior to recording this footage, I took this little guy out of the box and fitted the couplers and a Hornby DCC decoder, so this is not the first opening of the box, hence the decoder manual and the analog plug. The model does come with optional blanking plates to be fitted instead of the couplers, but as this loco will be working a yard, it needs the couplers for my purposes. As I mentioned with my 08s, my experience with Hornby is hit and miss, but this model is superb. I feel Hornby do really well with these small locos. I have seen some moderate to negative reviews about this loco, but I think it's great. Loads of attention to detail, sturdy construction, a detailed cab interior, and beautiful paint and decal work. In fact, I'm not sure if the markings are decals or paint, so leave a comment if you are in the know. I did also buy a pack of Bachmann loco drivers when I bought this loco, so at some point I will add the figures to the cab. I really enjoy staffed models because it adds to the character of a running session. This little critter has 4-wheel pickup, which is great, but I'm always a little bit wary about these small locos being able to handle point work with so little contact for power pickup. I only run DCC, and it's important that a loco like this has reliable power pickup as it avoids having to put in a keep alive capacitor. And just for a size comparison, here are the siblings next to each other. The 88DS is a lot beefier in every respect, which you absolutely cannot mistake in this picture, but would you believe the 48DS's cab is half a millimeter longer than the 88DS's? So far so good, so the next step is to pop this critter on the track and see how it performs. As I mentioned, I have already fitted the Hornby decoder to the loco. I usually opt for other brands of decoder, but I have been pleasantly surprised of late with the performance of the Hornby decoders. Just take a look at this slow speed. Superb. And the loco hasn't even been run in yet, so it's really doing well straight off the bat. This mechanism is super smooth and exceptionally quiet, and so far it looks like this could become a favorite for me. Now, I have filmed the removal of the body and the fitting of the decoder, but there are many videos and resources online about it, so it's hard for me to tell what content to include in this type of video. If you feel that I should include this type of thing, please just let me know in the comments below. And lastly, I tested the Loco out over some point work and it performed beautifully. Nice, slow speed, no rushing over the frogs, just smooth and clean running. These smaller Locos are packed with character, but also allow a little more room for rolling stock on a layout like this.
As you would have seen through the rest of the series, the way that I approach layout building is not really prototypical building. I like to freelance everything. I like to get an idea of an era that I'm interested in and a style that I'm interested in, and I'm not modeling real buildings. So today's approach is a little bit different because I had a bit of design block, so I decided to try something new. And what I'm going to do is use AI to generate an image for a factory for the layout, and I'm going to try and build my building as close to that AI as possible. Obviously, if it doesn't fit in completely, I will make some adjustments, but I'm really excited to try this out because it's completely new for me.
There are many different AI programs that you could use for this, but I already make use of Canva for my graphics, so I'm just going to use its built-in AI image generator for this example. With most AI programs, it's as easy as just typing in what you would like it to generate and hitting go. It's good to try and describe what you want as best you can, but as you'll see for my example, there isn't too much information needed to get what I'm looking for. For this example, I'm going to ask it to generate a small 1950s British factory, and I will specify that I want an exterior view. The AI engine takes a few seconds to work out the request and then generates an image based on the input parameters. It's important to note that these AI generators are not perfect, but for what I'm trying to achieve, it doesn't really have to be. I just need an idea to give me that inspiration to continue modeling the layout. As you get the generated ideas, you can try to refine your search parameters to get closer to exactly what you are looking for. I had already found the images that I liked in a previous search, so let's take a look at what I found. Of the 22 ideas that I liked, I narrowed it down to these 4 ideas. I want to point out the funny details that the AI generator adds to the images, like the names on the buildings or railway tracks in funny configurations. It's as if it has a database of qualities, but it's not completely sure how they fit together. Again, this isn't really a big deal for me because I just need a concept to work off for now. I was actually really impressed with how the mood was captured in the images. I wanted building ideas, but this also gave me ideas about how they could fit into the surroundings. After a day or two struggling to make a choice, I did finally decide that the last 2 buildings were what I was looking for this build, so let's get stuck in and see how it went. In the hope of keeping the video length manageable, I'm going to skip the initial construction and start after the basic structure was built. I've done my best to capture the overall look of this building, but as you can see, it's very basic at this point. You'll notice that I made a mistake on the smaller leg of the building as I made it a little too wide for the layout. There are times where it's worth redesigning and recutting the model, but for today I'm just going to show you how I work around mistakes when I encounter them. In this case, I just recut the end of the building to make it a little narrower, leaving some unengraved MDF, which I'm gonna cover up next. To rectify my mistake, I decided to sacrifice some windows and stick on 2 wooden additions that would kind of look like they had been added post-construction of the building in reality. I was actually really happy with how this turned out, and I felt it made the building look a bit more interesting by adding some extra locations for more detail opportunities. Now that I was happy with the overall structure, I gave the building a grey base coat with some spray paint, and I moved on to adding some finer detail to the brickwork. I want the structure to look a little older than the others on the layout, so I'm going to show you a technique that I really like using on these laser cut MDF kits. I take my hobby knife and I actually pop some of the bricks out. It's a time-consuming exercise, but I really feel that it's worth it to give this building a nice aged look. When I add my white acrylic paint mortar, it will collect in these recesses and provide some nice breaks in the brickwork to create a little bit of visual interest. So just like in my previous builds, I apply an undiluted white acrylic paint to the brickwork, making sure that I fill any and all gaps as best I can. I wipe off any excess, leaving the mortar and missing bricks detailed and the rest of the brickwork with varying shades of the residual paint. Although this is a painstaking step in the process, I feel that it is totally worth every minute that it takes to apply it. The mortar looks detailed and any gaps in the model can be filled with this technique very easily. I find that the faded residual paint really makes the brickwork stand out in the end. So this is the end result of the white paint application. You can really see how all the finer details pop. There are loads of visual interest points, and these can also be a great place to use washes and shading techniques later on in the detailing. I'm dry brushing Vallejo dark grey blue as my first coat of brick color. I paint most of the color off the brush onto a piece of paper, leaving just a small amount of paint that will cling to the raised detail of the brickwork. As I build this layer up, you can really see how the previous step starts to pay dividends here. All the finer details start to jump out at you and the building starts to show some character. When I had completed the initial coat, I followed it up with a few spots of olive drab using the same technique, and then moved on to the windows and stone details. I used the same dark grey blue paint to paint in these details. When I applied too much paint, I just wiped it off with my finger and tried to blend the colors in to get the desired look. After I completed the brick and stonework, I moved on to the wooden additions. For these, I used a slightly watered down dark earth acrylic, also from Vallejo. I tried to apply these coats in the same direction a wood grain would run. The model doesn't have wood detail, but one could always add it with a wire brush. I am not too fussy on this build, so I'm just going to use a subtle paint technique for now. Once all the paint had dried fully, I gave the entire model a light white acrylic dry brushing, and this is what the final paint effect looked like. I'm pretty happy with it, and I think it fits in with the rest of the layout quite well. For these two buildings, I'm going to show you an alternate method I use for making windows. It takes a bit longer than the method that I used in the previous videos, but I really feel that it's a worthwhile time investment. I'm going to build my windows up in two parts. This creates an extra bit of depth to each window. I'm also cutting the windows much finer than in the previous videos, and the material is also a little bit thinner. The overall effect is a more delicate looking window with some depth detail. I glue the two components together, and after the glue sets, I give the frames a spray with some regular hardware store spray paint. I add a layer of frosted acetate to the back, and they are ready to be installed. I don't know how it is elsewhere in the world, but here there are not many children that follow in their parents' footsteps with the model train hobby. My 4-year-old son loves spending time playing with trains and helping where he can in the workshop. So I want to enjoy it for as long as he remains interested. So the extra set of hands that you see in this clip are his. And he actually really helped out a heck of a lot because I had really grown bored of gluing these windows in place. With the windows in place, I could move on to the roofs of the building. I cut out a square band that fits snug around the top of the building to create the look of a gutter, and then I inserted the two diagonal supports that will act as a skeleton for the roof. Next, I glued on some cardboard triangles that will act as a base to apply the roof tiles to in the next step. I followed the same procedure for the side wing of the building. Now, there is also the option of engraving roof tiles onto the cardstock, but I really wanted to show some of the techniques that I've used in the past for buildings on my layouts and for clients' layouts. And you'll see in the next step, there's way more depth when we apply roof tiles as a separate detail. Onto the roof tile application. Now, this is absolutely painstaking and incredibly boring, but as you will see later in the video, the level of detail you get is just superb with this method. I've tried different thicknesses of cardboard in the past, but I always come back to regular printer paper for this task. It just works really well and it's not too thick. So I've cut out lengths of tile strips and I'm going to stick one layer on at a time, starting from the front edge of the roof. This gives a nice overlapped look without giving too much thickness to the roofing, and any excess that I have on the edges I'm just going to trim off with my hobby knife. Before I can move on to painting this roof, I need to close up all the gaps where the edges of the roofing meet. I use a thicker cardstock for this, and I carefully stick these ridge caps down, trying to make sure that they stay as straight as possible. So I know that I've mentioned how tedious these tasks can be, but in reality I really enjoy this time because it requires my undivided attention. And that actually helps calm me down quite a lot because I'm quite highly strung in my day-to-day work. I always wonder at the start of the project if this type of detailing is worth it because it takes so long and we often don't even notice these things when we operate our layout. But after I've completed it, I also always feel a great sense of achievement. I truly believe that these uninterrupted, repetitive procedures of model building are the perfect antidote for a high-stress life. With the ridge caps in place and dry, I gave both roofs a coat of grey primer spray paint, and after a few minutes drying time, I moved on to adding some detail paints to a few of the tiles. I want this building to look well weathered, so I'm going to try and emphasize some replaced and worn tiles by applying some browns and olive greens to a few of the tiles. In order to blend all the colors together and create the look of years of weathering, I am going to apply a heavy black wash to the roof. This not only blends the colors together, but it creates shadow in all the recesses that it flows into. And I'm just using regular black acrylic paint and tap water to create this wash. Whenever you use a wash on a model, it's really important to give it enough time to dry fully, especially if you plan on dry brushing the piece afterwards. So with the roof dry, I'm dry brushing white acrylic paint onto all the raised detail of the roof. And when I stuck the roof tiles down, I used a fair amount of PVA glue so that it would add some extra roughness to the roof, and that is exactly what we want for dry brush details. So let's take a look at how it all turned out. It was only when editing this part of the video that I realized I hadn't actually recorded the metal roofing over the wooden extensions. If you are interested in how I painted those, it was the same method that I outlined in my previous videos. But the quick summary is grey primer, black wash, and a white dry brush. I chose this design for the second building as it really reminded me of the small factories I would see when I was a kid, when I would visit my grandfather's stainless steel cutlery factory in Germiston. These small factories were the backbone of the economy and of their communities. I'm skipping right ahead to the assembled model for this building just to save a bit of time in this video. I've used MDF for the main structure, styrene plastic for the end details, and I've 3D printed the pillar caps out of PLA filament. I've tried my best to capture the overall look of this AI building, even though mine is a little bit longer than the one shown in the AI generated image. After the building gets its coat of grey primer, I move straight onto adding the mortar and filling the gaps between the pillars and their pillar caps with white acrylic paint. It's the same procedure as before, a thick layer of white acrylic paint painted onto the brickwork, and then I use my finger or a wet cloth to wipe off any excess. And then, just like the previous building, a thorough dry brushing with Vallejo dark grey blue, a few passes with some olive drab, and when it's all dry, a white dry brush for the entire model. I followed the same procedure as before to assemble the windows and doors, painted them up and stuck them in place. Again, the roof was exactly the same. It was the painstaking application of the tiles, priming and weathering. The only difference was that I chose to not do the underlying colors for the unique tiles on this particular building. I noticed at the time of editing that I didn't add a roof cap, so that is something I'll add in the next video along with all the additional details for this building. With all that work complete, let's take a look at how both buildings turned out in the end. In the past, I used to really enjoy trawling swap meets and secondhand sites to try and find buildings that I could use on my layout. It was great fun, and the trick was to try and get my layout to fit the building that I'd purchased. And it was tricky because it was the buildings I could afford. It was never new items. It was just what I could find in my budget. Now, it's a massive change in thought process when you decide that you want to build your own buildings for your layout. It seems like it would be a pretty easy process and you could have exactly what you want, but it's often really difficult designing a building to fit the space that you have available. It's also difficult to come up with unique ideas. That's the most tricky thing, and when you have designer's block, it just seems impossible to come up with a new interesting design. So I was really excited to try out this AI image generation tool, and I'm pretty happy with the results. My buildings don't match the pictures exactly, but I do believe that I captured the essence of the two structures. Now, there are still many details to add to both buildings, but this video got very long very quick, so I'll be adding these details in the next video. I'm going to add rainwater downpipes, gutters, chimneys, some stairs, and a lot of other details, so I'll cover all of that next time. I want both of these buildings to belong to the same industry, but I really haven't decided what that could be yet. If any ideas pop into your mind whilst you're watching this video, please share them in the comments below. I'd really appreciate that. There are just so many possibilities, but I'd love to hear from some of you what you think these buildings could be. I would like you to take a look at a close-up view of the roof detail that the white dry brushing has picked up. The excess glue that I used when applying the roof tiles has dried into a rough texture surface that can be easily highlighted. I really love the way these roof tiles turned out. And finally, let's take a look at how the two models look in place on the layout. You will notice a small gantry crane on the layout. I'm still undecided about this feature. I built it for my shelf layout and I just wanted to test it out in this position. It does add the possibility of more operations for this spurv track, but I'll make a final decision on another day. If I do choose to add it, I will build another one to show you how I did this one. So if you do think it fits in, please comment below and I'll take note of that and add it in for the next video. So on to the last order of business for today's episode, and that is to run a Class 20 on the layout as requested by Tony Robinson a while back. Hands down one of my favorite locos. It is a pleasure to run one on the layout. This is an older Bachmann model, but it still runs perfectly. I recently upgraded it to a Hornby HM 7000 decoder, and I am very happy with the result. I really feel that this quick running session will show you just how easily one can run a medium-sized loco on a small layout like this one. There's obviously a tighter limit to how many wagons you can haul at one time, but this can actually add to the enjoyment of your layout. Just as with real-world design, limitation is one of the best things to spark creativity. Working on a blank slate with no limits or boundaries can often be a far more difficult endeavor. In this case, a bigger loco means less wagons, and this leads to more interesting switching maneuvers to get the job done. One could also have special loads that only get delivered by bigger locos. So there are really many options to add operational fun on these small layouts. When I showcase my shelf layout at some point in the future, I'll give you a rundown of a dice game I'm working on that adds some boundaries to operating sessions, and this just creates a little bit of extra interest. But as I say, boundaries and limitations are a good thing for model railroading. As usual, I want to say a huge thank you to all of you that watch my videos, and a special thank you to those that like and subscribe. Growing a YouTube channel is no easy endeavor, and every comment and new subscriber provides me with the motivation I need to keep making these videos. I try to read every comment and I try to respond to every comment, and I absolutely love interacting with all of you. And it makes me really happy that some of the techniques I show in my videos can help others with their layouts. If you did enjoy the video, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. It goes a long way to getting my videos more exposure, and I am incredibly grateful for all the support. In the next episode, I'm going to finish detailing the two factories, and I'll start adding the ground covering to the layout. Until next time, thanks for watching and keep training.